No. All right, everybody. How are y'all? It's 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. I'm sitting on the porch. I've already gotten up and went to Bible study this morning. And I went to, when I came back from Bible study, I stopped in the zinnia patch and I weeded in it for a little while and got hot and sweaty. And then I came over here and got me a good old cup of water with some ice. I don't know why, but ice is always better. Go away, Mr. Yellow Jackets. You see him fly by just then, I think they smell the water. I don't like yellow jackets. One time, well, let a few more folks get on here and I'll tell y'all a story about some yellow jackets. It drove me nuts and like to ate me alive one time. But you know, they smell water. Look who's here.
I've been working. What you been doing?
I've been working too.
He is sweetie. We're both sweetie.
She's fussing at me because I'm doing Facebook Live instead of working. But I got hot and tired, so I thought I'd take a little break. So one time, Hannah and I were working in the yard, and it was at the lake house. Y'all have seen, some of y'all stay at the lake house if you come here to stay. And we're pulling up shrubs, not shrubs we had planted like wild grown shrubs that were just, trashed shrubs. There's Kimberly from Ontario, Canada. Hey, Kimberly. And so we were a two-man team, and so she would back the truck up, and I would wrap a chain around, and then she would pull forward, and it would pull the shrub up by its roots. And when I say shrubs, I mean like privet and yopon and stuff that you don't want growing in your yard. That we hadn't been there long. We're trying to get the yard kind of established. Hey, Robin from Jonesboro, Arkansas, I love your town. Nan from Kentucky. I just got back from Kentucky. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. And so we were just kind of working our way up the side of the house. This house, by the way, we had moved in. I wrote a story called Snakes and Bankers. It's in one of the books. I don't remember which one. And you can read about us moving one of our houses. We have moved several in our lifetime, but this one we had moved in. So we moved it into a natural setting that was full of underbrush. And so we were just pulling up that underbrush. And I reached down, I might have even been on my hands and knees. I think I was. And I reached down and wrapped that chain around that shrub. And the first clue I had was I heard something in my ear. It went bzzz. And of course, everybody knows that sound. Everybody knows what that means. And so I knew, I was like, well, something bad's about to happen. And the next thing I knew was I got lit up right here. And then just in that, it's like fire ants. Have y'all ever been in a thing of fire ants? Some of y'all don't even know what fire ants are. Let me tell you, it's a blessing. I'm going to come back to the yellow jackets, but fire ants, they build these big ant colonies. And sometimes you'll be walking around in the yard and you're not paying attention. You'll step in them. And you'll stand in them if you're not real careful. And they'll get all over your shoes and they crawl up your leg. And they have this magic signal that they send out. And a fire ant, when one bites you, they all bite you. And so you'll get 20 bites at one time before you even know that you've gotten in the ant bed. And so those yellow jackets, just like those fire ants, as soon as that one stung me on the neck, boy, they just started popping me all over the place. And then I saw the hive, the swarm coming out of the hive, and I was just surrounded. Well, look, it was an awful situation because we were on a hill on the side of the house. Hannah's standing beside the truck behind me, so I turned around and yelled at her, get in the truck. As I'm running by her, trying to get away from the yellow jackets, I can't go up the hill because Banks, I think it was Banks. Hannah said it was Bay and Kate. That's right, because it would have been her.
The youngest one didn't have any clothes
That's right. So this was before Banks was born. Cape is out in the yard naked. She ain't but about maybe 2 years old. Maybe I'm playing in a water hose or something. And Bay is with her. Well, I can't run up the hill because yellow jackets, they smell you and they'll follow you. And so I knew they were going to follow me. So I knew I had to get away from everybody. So I turn. I can't go up the hill because the baby's up there with no clothes on and Bay's up there with her. And so I turn and go down the hill and I tell Hannah, I yell at her, get in the truck. And I just run right by her. And so, and then you can't stop running. See, that they don't stop chasing you. You got to keep running until you get far enough away that they'll leave you alone. And so I ran all the way around the house. And as I was coming around the house, I was praying, Lord, please don't let them kids be up there. Please don't let them kids be up there. Well, what I didn't know was Hannah had yelled at the girls before she got in the truck for them to get in the house. And so, because the swarm was in between Hannah and the girls, and so we were really in a bad spot. So I came around the house, and Hannah had, I don't even know how did you get in the house? Yeah.
And you was out there behind the courtyard, and so I came out there.
Okay.
I think I may have run inside, but then I came back out when I realized where you were to try to help get them off of them. They were stuck.
So I don't know. She doesn't remember how she got in the house either. But when I came all the way around the house, I remember the two little girls had their faces planted to the windows looking at me. And I remember Hannah coming out of the house. And I had yellow jackets all over me. I was wearing a shirt pretty similar to this, and they had stung through the shirt, and their stingers were stuck, and they couldn't get off the shirt. My hair was long like it is. They were all in my hair, and they were stinging me in my head and on the back of my neck. And most of my stings were around my head and my neck. And I think it was 9 or 13. Do you remember how many times it was? Yeah. Hannah said she was worried we were going to have to go to the hospital. It was so many. I think it was 13 stings, and they were all from my shoulder up. Anywhere I had clothes, they couldn't get to me, but they got my head and my face. And I think that was because, as I was working on that shrub, my head and my face was what was down in it, and they probably smelled that and came to that. And probably should have been stung 50 or 100 times. I mean, it was the biggest yellow jacket swarm I have ever seen, because once we got them out of my hair and got them off my body, of course, I went inside. I was in terrible pain, and I don't know that I was in shock, but I needed to sit down and just kind of like catch my breath. And at some point, we went around to that side of the house and looked out the window, and that swarm was just like a tornado, just swarming. And eventually we had to let them calm down. That night I went out there and poured a bunch of gasoline in it and set it on fire. I know that people say don't pour gasoline in a yellow jacket hive because it'll pollute the groundwater. But when you got a yellow jacket hive that big and you got small kids, you do whatever you got to do to keep it. And it's right there on your house. Yeah, it was within 3 feet of the side wall of the house. I don't know if y'all can hear Hannah or not. She's saying, oh, look, there's, I don't have my glasses on, but I think that says Rhea from South Africa. I don't know, Rhea, if I've ever had anybody from South Africa join us, so welcome. Glad to have you with us. So I don't know if you could hear Hannah, but what she was saying was that was one of Bay's shining moments as a big sister, because she was yelling, Hannah was yelling to them, get inside. And Bay ran over, and Bay couldn't have been 5 years old. And she ran over and scooped Cape up and ran her inside and shut the door to get her to safety. And so, yeah, it was definitely one of those big sister moments where when you look back on it, you're like, hey, she did great. We're proud of you. And we really celebrated what she had done because it was so important. So anyway, I didn't come on here to tell y'all that story. I just said that because a yellow jacket flew by and it triggered the memory in my mind. I can tell you this, that yellow jackets in Alabama are ground dwelling for the most part. Sometimes their nest will get so big it comes out of the ground if they're under a structure or something. They are paper. They're hornets, and they make a paper nest just like a wasp nest does. There's a wasp nest right there that's got 2 or 3 wasps on it. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Right there in the corner. I need to spray them. And so, but there'll be thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and that's what makes them so dangerous. Is that there's so many that you don't just get stung once or twice. You get stung, dozens and dozens of times. And so anytime I have them around the house, I start thinking, well, there's a nest somewhere. And there probably is a nest within 100 feet of me right now. I just don't know where it is. So I have to start keeping an eye out for it. And so especially if you start seeing a lot of yellow jackets, you really got to keep an eye out. Hey, so I just got back from a mission trip to Kentucky. And I want to tell you first that, I am very, upfront about my faith. And so being a missionary, I think, is important to any Christian. And so a friend of mine who I've gone on mission trips with before had called and said, hey, I'm going on this mission trip. You want to go? I said, yes, I do, because it was a addiction-based mission. And so I want to say, hey, by the way, I don't know if she's watching, but I want to say hey to Jackie. And just say, hey, I'm still praying for you, and I think everything's going to be great. I also want to say hey to Tim and Tracy and Tammy and Miss Thelma and Brother Ken and Brother Dewey. I think all of y'all guys, if you're watching, I just want to say, hey, good morning to you. I met all those great folks on my mission trip, and just a wonderful experience. We went to Miss Thelma's house. She lives up in the holler, as they say in Kentucky. We were in Appalachia. Now, let's have this discussion real quick, and I want to make a point about it. Sometimes people do things different, and sometimes people say things different, and people, just are different. But that doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong. So I grew up in South Alabama, and down in South Alabama, we say those are the I don't know why we do this, but we say that's the Appalachian Mountains, or we might say the Appalachian Mountains, but we always put an N on it, and it's either a short A or a long A. Now, while I was in Kentucky, I was taught that they say this is Appalachia, like I'm going to throw an apple at you. That's how they say it, and that was how I was supposed to say it, so that's what I did. That's what Mr. Kenny told me. And so I did what I was told, just out of respect for them, right? But I don't know that just because I say Appalachian and they say Appalachia, I'm not sure that one's right and one's wrong, right? I think anybody who says either one of those, there's my good friend Kevin from Bug Tussle. Hey, Kevin. You know what? I think we're both right? And so while we were there, I heard a conversation between two folks from two different denominations, and they weren't arguing, but they were getting, heated, maybe is the right word, about who was right and who was wrong, whose church was right and whose church was wrong. And here's what I was thinking the whole time is whether you say Appalachia or whether you say Appalachian, it doesn't matter as long as you're talking about the same set of mountains. And so eventually I just went over to him, and a good friend of mine years ago said this to me. I've never forgot it. I went over to him and I said, hey, let me suggest something to y'all as you discuss who's right and who's wrong is why don't we focus on the big things we agree on and quit getting caught up in the little things we disagree on. And wouldn't life be so much simpler if we just all practiced that? You know, we seem to live in a society that just wants to quarrel and wants to be contentious and wants to argue over the dumbest things. And let me tell you, there's only a few things in life that really matter, okay? And as long as we agree on those big things, everything else doesn't really matter. And so I don't care if you say Appalachia or Appalachian or Appalachian or them mountains over yonder. I don't care as long as we're talking about the same thing. Blue Ridge Mountains, Smoky Mountains, Smoky Mountain National Park, Tennessee, Kentucky. You see my point? I hope you do. Give me a big thumbs up if you understand what I'm saying. Let's see. Oh, and I wanted to tell you about, because I posted that video this morning. I got another point I want to make. I posted that video this morning about that cemetery I found. So it was Corinth Baptist Church. And listen, we were on a 1-lane gravel road that we had been on for probably 3 miles, and it turned off of a 1-lane asphalt road that hadn't been paved in 50 years that we had been on for 5 miles. And we found this Baptist church. And the Baptist church, I think, if I read it right, if I understood what I was seeing, it closed in 1953. Now, somebody's keeping it up a little bit. They're not heard. I don't think they're having services there anymore. If they are, it might be like a homecoming service every year or something like that. There's not another house within 3 miles of this church. And so it looked like there was some markers and stuff there, so I was trying to read and I didn't have somebody telling me what it all meant. I was just trying to put it all together. So it looked like it closed in 1953. Now, behind it up on a hill is a cemetery. I didn't even see the cemetery this is just how the Lord works. We were driving down the road. One of the guys, we'd been working on a house. We'd been working on Miss Thelma's house. One of the guys says, I forgot my phone. So we pull off on the edge of this 1-lane gravel road right by this church, because that was the only place to pull off. And he hopped in another truck, went back to Miss Thelma's house to look for his phone. So I'm just killing time. And I'm like, well, I'm going to walk around this church. So I walk around and start looking at it. And I realized that on the hill behind it is a cemetery. Now, unfortunately, shameless plug moment here. Also, that cemetery was overrun with poison ivy. I don't have any with me, but I did then. And so as soon as I got back in the truck, I got me some Outdoor Hands poison ivy scrub, and I scrubbed my legs and my hands down like nobody's business. That stuff works great. I don't have any to show you, I don't think. Sometimes I have some laying around, but I don't see any laying out here. But anyway, Outdoor Hands poison ivy scrub. You need to, if you work outside, if you do anything outside and you're bad about poison ivy, you need to get you some. Follow the directions; it'll work great. It's been a miracle worker in my life. I love it. I'll try to put a link somewhere in here for that if I can. So I'm weeding through this poison ivy, but poison ivy is kind of sneaky. Like there was a bunch of Virginia creeper on the ground. And I didn't realize until I was in it that I was in the poison ivy. And isn't that true in life too? Like sometimes we don't realize we are in the thick of the muck until we're in the thick of the muck. And then it's hard to get out without getting itchy, And so you got to be paying attention in life just like you do when you're wandering through the woods. And so I start looking at all the tombstones. Now some of them are really old tombstones. When I say old, I mean like back before they had inscriptions on the tombstones, just rocks, and maybe a rock this big that just has a cross that has been, chiseled in it. Others had been hand chiseled, so you could tell, like, a modern tombstone. I have no idea how they chisel tombstones today, but they are perfectly etched, and there's no deviation from the letters or the font or anything else. Some of these that had been hand chiseled, and so it looked like somebody had drawn with a pen, and so there were waves and chip marks and imperfections. And then, and then there were some modern ones. The most recent grave I saw was buried in the 1980s, so that's still, 40, 45 years old. But I saw a man that was buried in 1880 in that grave, in that graveyard. And so what I got to thinking about was this. Some people spend all their life to make a name for themselves. I'm a public official. I am elected by my peers. I say with humbleness and modesty that I am very well known in my jurisdiction. Lots of folks probably don't like me, but they know me, right? And so you might say that I've created a legacy for myself, that people know my name, and presumably people are going to come to my funeral when I die because they like me. Now, there are people that are really famous. Joe Biden, Donald Trump. Everybody in the country probably knows those two names. Those men have built legacies for themselves. But here's the reality, is that after I die, just a few days after I die, most people are going to go back to their normal lives. And they're going to forget about me pretty quickly. And the only people who are going to anything about Walt and Errol are going to be my wife and my kids. And maybe if I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough to have grandkids by then, maybe my grandkids too. And so then my kids are going to die. And then maybe my grandkids who were old enough to remember me hold on to a legacy. But, any of the grandkids that maybe were infants, they're going to know they had a pawpaw or whatever they call me. But they're not going to remember me. And so really the point I'm trying to make is this, is our legacy is pretty short-lived no matter who you are. Think about it. If I ask you to name every president we've ever had, most people can't. Most people can say George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and the more recent ones, and that's it. Well, that means there's 40-something guys that you can't remember the name of, and they were the most powerful man in the Western Hemisphere at one point in time. That's how short-lived their legacy is. Is that you with me? You tracking if you're tracking me, give me a 2 thumbs up. And so, that tombstone, that's why we invented tombstones, right? So people would remember us. How vain is that? God said, you build an altar to remember me. We build a tombstone to remember ourselves. That's just crazy. But there is a real and lasting legacy that matters. Okay? It's not what you accomplish. It's not the name you make for yourself. It's not how many times you get elected or how much money you get or how high up the corporate ladder. None of those things build your legacy that will last. There are people in that cemetery that were buried 100 years ago that nobody remembers, but they still have a lasting legacy, and that legacy is in eternity, because everybody in that cemetery is either in heaven or hell, and that's the legacy that matters. And so, what's your legacy? What legacy have you made for yourself? Do you know where you'll spend eternity? 50% of the people in this country today don't practice faith. I don't know what the statistic is on how many of those people believe there is a God, but don't practice faith. But I think probably there's a good portion of them that just don't believe at all. So thank you, Audrey Murphy, for the 2 thumbs up. So if you believe there's a God, what's your legacy, right? So I just want to challenge you today to go out and do, what? I mean, James wrote, faith without works is dead. So put your faith into action, right? And love your brother like Jesus called us to do. But also, Be more than that, right? Be a true disciple. Be a true witness to the value of Christ, because that's really the only lasting legacy that we have. And so I just want to challenge you with that. Now, I will tell you that, I tried to make a legacy for myself in a different way. Right? It's kind of interesting to me. I've been struggling. I don't know, wrestling. I've been contemplating this morning. So I write these books, right? Here's my fourth book right here. It's going to be backwards. I'm sorry. It says Fourth Night's Watch. That's 4 manatees on the front. Here's a cabin, because I've been building my cabin. Here's an anchor. This book has a lot of nautical theme to it. And so I wanted an anchor on the cover, but also Jesus is my anchor, right? Here's a drawing of Maggie May, my hound dog. Of course, there's the good book itself. Here's a clock down here, because you know what? The clock's ticking every day. Of course, another sailboat, a cup of coffee, because y'all know I love some coffee. If it wasn't 1,000 degrees out here right now and I wasn't already sweating, I'd be drinking coffee. And then just a good scene of a creek, because I've been spending so much time on the creek. 260 pages, all full color. Nobody asked you. You got anything you want to say? You've been listening to me.
Huh?
You've been listening.
I've been reading.
Oh. Look at Kate. Look how cute she is. Making that funny face. 260 pages of short stories that I've written, all true stories. They all have color photographs. I don't know why I can't seem to find a colored photograph right now, but they're in there, I promise.
That was a color photograph you just showed me.
I know, but it's like every page I turn to is just black and white words. Like there's no, like I'm lying about there being pictures in here. There's really pictures in here. And so, this, by the way, is what we call a dummy book. Some of y'all are looking at it going, I know those pictures. That's because this is really 3 Dog Days. This is the 3rd book with the cover for the 4th book on it, because the 4th book hadn't been printed yet. But so we make these dummy books so you have something to look at. So I tried to write down my legacy. I guess. I think that's what I was doing when I started. Not 100% sure. But anyway, the Lord led me to publish the stories I was writing. I wonder if y'all know that story. Do you know why I started writing? Let me tell you real quick. I'm going to keep it short because I got to go. In 2015, I think it was, Bay would have been a young girl. Maybe 2017. No, it was 2015. I was diagnosed with terminal ocular sarcoma. I had a tumor in my eye right here. It pushed my eyeball out. I had 2 different surgeons look at it, and both diagnosed it as terminal cancer, the kind of cancer that if you cut on it, it would spread and it would just make it worse. And the treatment was to go in and do recision surgery. And that means you cut out big portions all around the tumor to try to hope that you capture enough that it's not going to spread. And so I thought I was dying. And I had been told I was dying. I had been told I had 2 years to live. And I went to Emory University, to the preeminent, the finest ocular surgeon in the world. And after the surgery, he decided, the short version is this, he was going to biopsy it. Weren't really supposed to biopsy it, but he said, look, if it is sarcoma, you're going to die anyway, so what does it matter? He was really matter of fact, and I appreciated that. So I said, okay, fine, so we'll biopsy it. So he put me to sleep, cut me open right here, spread everything apart, went in there to biopsy it. I already had a needle biopsy, by the way. No, I'd already had a regular biopsy too by that point. I forgot. So I'd had 2 biopsies already. He wanted to biopsy it for himself. And so while he was in there, he decided, I'm going to get the whole thing out. And so he does. He removes the tumor. It was in this corner of my eye, and it was that big. And actually, he didn't remove it all. There's still some of it. I can still, if I stick my finger way up in there, I can still feel part of it. And so when I woke up, I guess not just woke up, but had enough sense to like have a conversation. He said, "Look, I don't." He said, "This is cancer," and he said, "I'm not entirely sure what kind of cancer, but it's cancer, and this ain't good." And so I went home from the hospital from Emory. Hannah drove me, and I was desperate, decimated, you know. Anyway, the short version is this: God healed me. I didn't deserve a miracle. I'm not worthy of a miracle, and so I'm really reluctant to say God worked a miracle in my life. But I want to give Him credit, okay? Because I didn't die. I don't have cancer. I went through a year of all sorts of experimental stuff, and I was sick as a dog for a year, and I didn't like it. And the whole time I started writing stuff. Well, I first started videotaping stuff. We had this old VHS, like micro VHS recorder, and I started videotaping stuff. I still have those videos somewhere for the girls. And it was like, things like, here are 10 things that if a boy does, you should not marry him. And so I would tell them, I would just list those things out. And then at some point I started writing stuff down. And so I began to collect these stories that I had. And anyway, because I did that though because I thought I was dying and I needed to impart whatever little bit of wisdom I had for my girls because I wasn't sure I was going to have the opportunity to do it. But you know what? God was good to me, and He restored me and delivered me from that. That they sent it to how many pathology labs? Do you remember?
I don't. You got a long hair hanging off your chin.
I know they sent it to. They sent it to the Houston Clinic, not the Houston Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, 3 or 4 other pathology labs, and nobody could ever come to a conclusion about what it was. And so I'm grateful, I'm thankful. But anyway, that's why, so somebody said, why did you start writing? That's why I started writing.
He's always been a writer.
Hannah said I've always been a writer.
Y'all ought to read the love letters I have.
Yeah, she's got a big tub of love letters that I wrote to her. One day we'll publish those. How about that?
I don't think so. Those are getting burned when I get older.
Oh. So anyway, these are stories about me and my girls. The story is much more complicated than that. Okay, I just gave you a small snippet of it, but these are the stories of remembrances with my girls and my wife and our family, and it's all about how God works in our family and about how God works in our lives, and I try oftentimes to draw out the lesson, if you will, just like our legacy in the graveyard is nothing compared to our legacy in eternity. So I try to, as I write those stories, I try to draw out those kind of lessons. So,
have you told them what the girls say when you turn everything into a lesson?
no, hold on just a second. Can I turn the camera on you?
I guess.
All right. I can't see you.
The
All
girls
right,
say, well, let me sit different. The girls say, when we're at the dinner table, a topic will come up, we'll be talking, and Walter will try to turn it into a lesson, and they'll just kind of shake their head and say, oh, Lord, Daddy, we don't need another TED Talk.
If you don't know, a TED Talk is a educational type podcast on the internet where people go on there and give lectures and try to impart wisdom. And so the girls say, not another TED Talk. Anyway, shepherding outdoors is what I write about, because I felt like I needed to find common ground with my girls, and I found it outside in the great outdoors. And so I became an outdoor shepherd. And so 260 pages, there's 4 books. This is the 4th one. You have Shepherding Outdoors, and you have Shepherding Outdoors Volume 2. Then you have Shepherding Outdoors 3 Dog Days, and now Shepherding Outdoors 4th Night's Watch. 4th Night's Watch because it was on the 4th watch of the night that Jesus walked on water to the disciples and called Peter out of the boat. And you know what? Sometimes as a parent, we got to have the courage to get out of the boat. It's not always easy. I don't always know what we're doing. Hannah doesn't always know what she's doing. We just get out of the boat and have faith that it'll work out. And so you can pre-order this book right now. They'll be in your mailbox in time for you to give out for Christmas presents. Shepherdingbook.com or 1-800-361-8059. So I'll put all that stuff up here too. If you know a parent, if you got an adult son or an adult daughter that's parenting, they might enjoy these books. These are not how-to books. These are not, I'm an expert at parenting and you should do what I do. That in fact, some of them are, I'm an idiot and you should learn from reading this not to do what I did. But I do think that, that you know what, this is, somebody needs this, and maybe you know who it is. And so shepherdingbook.com, 1-800-361-8059. I started writing down my legacy, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. Not that I think that my legacy is worth somebody remembering. I really wrote these for my girls and my wife, and so if the Lord takes me home today, they'll always be able to look back on this. And so we tell Hannah's mama all the time, and we in fact, I used to go videotape my mama and get her to tell stories so I could document those legacies. So I would encourage you to do the same thing. Sit down with a pen and a piece of paper this afternoon and just start writing down the funny stories of your family that you remember so that your kids will have them or your grandkids will have them.
They say you're forgotten in 3 generations.
Tell them again.
They say that you are forgotten in your impact in 3 generations.
And so write it down. Write it down. So here's what I'm going to leave you with, because this is the really cool thing, is if you're forgotten, so that was Mr. and Mrs. Campbell. If you go back and look at my reel from this morning, you'll see it. Mr. and Mrs. Campbell buried right beside each other. He died in 1880. She died in 1902. She lived 22 years past him.
That's what's going to happen to us.
And so, I know, chowing down, yeah. So, and you know, I'm sure that there's somebody in their family who could say, I remember my great, or I don't remember. They probably would say, you know, that's my great granddaddy, John Campbell, in that cemetery. I heard he was a good man. But that's the extent of the legacy. But here's the really cool thing I want you to think about. It is that that over 2,000 years ago, they put a man named Jesus in a tomb, and they rolled a tombstone in front of his tomb. They didn't even mark his tombstone with any words, and still today, 2,000 years later, his legacy is alive and well. Guess who came to join? You want to come say hey?
Oh no, me and Beck's going to get donuts.
Come on, say hey real quick. Come on.
Donut.
Donuts? Where are y'all going to get donuts?
The donut shop?
You going to get me one?
Yeah, we can.
Look who's home from college. Our oldest, and she got a haircut yesterday too. My hair's almost longer than hers now. Oxford, Mississippi girl right here, Ole Miss Rebel. She was destined to go to Ole Miss because she was always a rebel.
What kind of donut do you want?
I want a jelly-filled raspberry and a jelly-filled lemon.
Okay. We have to get Dad donuts.
Would you like to come say hey?
Say hey to the live.
Banks just said, since you want donuts, are we getting a credit card? Hey, everybody.
Hey.
So everybody's here except for Kate. Kate is at a baseball game this morning. Bye, girls. Love y'all.
I'll see you in a second.
I love y'all, too. I hope y'all have an awesome day. I appreciate y'all so very much from all over the country. I thank you for your encouragement and your comments. Remember to give a thumbs up or a heart. That lets Facebook know that you like this content and you want to see more of it. And then don't forget to go pre-order this book, shepherdingbook.com. That's where you can order it on the internet. Or you can call 1-800-361-8059 and go ahead and get yours pre-ordered. That's the only way you're guaranteed to get a copy. People always say, well, I'll buy one later. No, that you probably won't, because they'll sell out. All 3 of the first books have sold out. I do have copies of I got a second printing of the second book on the way. I have copies of the third book. I have a very few copies of the first book. I'll put in the comments, in the thing above, how you can get copies of those too. All right, love y'all. Have a great day. Stay safe.